근데 사람들이 자꾸 저를 쳐다보는데. 아, 뭘 걸어? 내 좋아하나?
얘가 신혼집이에요.
The London look? For stabbings. Oh, you're right. Yeah, you need that now, right? It's so you don't get stabbed. Yes, apparently people going crazy over in London with them knives. The London look?
What's something wild you've seen in nightlife in Japan?
I saw a woman like passed out, and then just a couple guys carried her away. I assume they were friends.
Oh, okay.
They seem like they were friends at least. Like I don't. Yeah.
Wait, can I ask you a question?
Hold up.
There's no more context to that. Just I was walking.
You assumed they were...
I assumed they were friends. Like that's something that like friends would do. You'd carry your friend home.
Right. No one else would do that.
Nah.
What's something wild you've seen in nightlife in Japan?
I saw a woman like passed out, and then just a couple guys carried her away. I assume they were friends.
Oh,
They
okay.
Japanese students can
Japanese women are refusing to date Japanese men, and the reason why is way more insane than you think. This isn't just about attraction, it's a complete shift in how relationships work in Japan. And here's where things get crazy. It's not just Japanese men getting rejected. A lot of women don't want to date foreign men either. There are massive cultural differences, hidden biases, and honestly some brutal truths that most people don't even talk about. But before we get into that, let's start with something shocking. All right, so there's a real phenomenon happening in Japan right now, which you might have seen across YouTube, and that is where men are giving up on dating entirely. They're called herbivore men, guys who have zero interest in pursuing women, getting married, or even trying to flirt. Some of them are too focused on work, others are just tired of rejection, and some, they've simply decided it's not worth the effort. Yeah, and the result? A growing number of Japanese women are frustrated, single, and looking for alternatives. And yeah, some of them turn to foreign guys.
I'm going to get myself a cute Japanese girlfriend, and the thing that sucks is most of the time it completely works. You know, obviously, if you're a foreigner, there's a lot of people who really like foreign people in Japan. You can almost have an easier time dating in Japan. I know I had an easier time dating here than in London, but also that could just be my own experience and not a collective experience of everyone watching this. So I might be giving.
But this only applies to a small percentage of women. And even then, there are some major problems. Okay, this sucks, but it's true that a lot of Japanese women think Western men smell bad. And no, this isn't some weird stereotype. It's a real issue. And if you think that's bad, it gets much worse. In the West, beards are a symbol of masculinity. In Japan, not so much. A lot of women actually prefer clean-shaven men. So if you're walking into Japan thinking your rugged Chris Hemsworth beard is going to make you stand out, you might be in for a shock when it actually turns women away.
You don't need to be Schwarzenegger or Dwayne Johnson in Japan to be attractive as a guy. Actually, it can be even negative sometimes, and that's no surprise. Because if you compare to Western women, Japanese women are generally smaller and shorter, and chances are that she's gonna feel kinda overwhelmed or even scared when meeting a guy like this. So rather than having a big muscular body, these are more important usually, and that's why they might look too feminine to Western people.
But let's say you pass the hygiene and facial hair test. There's still one massive cockblock standing in your way. Language. This is the killer. It's by far the biggest reason why foreign men struggle to date in Japan. Most Japanese women don't speak English fluently. And if you don't speak Japanese,
って思ったことあります。でも言語の壁ありますけど。
例えばどの国の人がいいとかってなんかあります？
どこでも行けるな。どこでも行けるけど、ヨーロッパ系かアメリカ系を。
congratulations. Your dating pool just shrank to almost nothing. There are plenty of stories of Western guys who thought they had a great connection with a Japanese woman, only to realize they were stuck in a cycle of awkward Google Translate conversations. It's fun at first, but the novelty wears off fast when you can't have a real conversation. So what happens? Well, in my experience, foreigners turn to dating apps as like the first thing they do. And this is where things get really weird. Because Tinder in Japan, it's a completely different beast. If you're a Western guy, you might expect it to work the same way it does back home. Swipe, match, chat, meet up. Nope. Not even close. First off, good luck finding a real name. Most Japanese women use fake initials, random words, or even emojis instead of their actual names. And profile pictures? Yeah, half of them are either anime characters, blurred faces, or just food. Seriously, some people literally put sushi as their profile pic, and that's not even the weirdest part. A huge number of Japanese women on Tinder aren't even looking for a boyfriend. Some just want to practice their English. Others are just curious about talking to foreigners but have zero intention of meeting up. And then you've got the worst case scenario. Women who are straight up afraid of being seen dating a foreigner. Japan is still a country where standing out too much is looked down upon. And for some women, dating a foreigner is seen as too different or even embarrassing.
Are you not embarrassed? This is really embarrassing.
YouTubers won't tell you this, but it's true for many people. But let's say you do find a match. You start talking, things are going great, you're about to meet up, and then you hear this phrase, "I've always wanted to date a foreigner." Congratulations, you've just met a gaijin hunter. Gaijin hunter is a term for Japanese women who exclusively date foreigners. Sounds good, right?
Yeah.
Like, who wouldn't want to be the type of guy they're looking for? Well, here's where it gets a little messy. A lot of gaijin hunters don't actually care about you. They care that you're foreign. Some of them are just obsessed with Western culture. Some have a checklist of nationalities they want to date. Yeah, this has actually happened from time to time. There are stories of guys who thought they found the perfect girlfriend, only to find out she literally had a list of countries she wanted to try. And it's not just about Western men. Some Japanese women actually prefer Latino men, Middle Eastern men, or even South Asian men because they find their features more exotic or masculine.
You never cheat, right? No, of course. So you never hung out with other girls, right? No, never. So you never go to, like, those places like brothels, right? なんで? あれはお金払ってるから浮気じゃないよね。
Some ladies also want a green card, which I thought strange, as I always see Japan as wealthy and amazing. But the reality is Japan has a brutal work culture. Long hours, insane expectations, and basically no work-life balance. Some women want out, and dating a foreigner is their escape plan.
Not trying to ruin your fantasy of Japanese guys. I don't know why you have fantasy Japanese guys, because Japanese guys are horrible, in my opinion. But these are the reasons why I wouldn't date a Japanese guy if I was a straight woman. If I was gay, probably it wouldn't be as bad. I don't know.
But here's where things get even crazier. A lot of Japanese women aren't just rejecting Japanese men, they're rejecting dating entirely. Yeah, and this is where the real problem comes in. Japan is facing a massive population crisis. The birth rate is collapsing, people aren't getting married, they aren't even dating. There are entire businesses built around renting boyfriends and girlfriends because people are so disconnected from real relationships. And for women, there's a lot of pressure. The expectation is still there. Get married, have kids, be a traditional wife. But modern Japanese women? They're not interested. So what does this all mean? Simple. The entire dating scene in Japan is breaking down. It's not just about Japanese men failing to attract women. It's not just about foreign men struggling with cultural differences. It's all of it. A complete societal shift. Fewer relationships, more isolation. And the idea of romance in Japan? It's disappearing. And here's the big twist. If you're a foreigner thinking Japan is some dating paradise, think again. The truth is, it doesn't matter where you're from. What matters is how well you fit into Japan itself. And if you don't understand the culture, if you don't learn the language, if you don't actually connect on a deeper level, you're just another foreigner passing through. I don't mean to sound like a dick here. I just want you to see the full picture. So the real question isn't just why dating in Japan is nearly impossible. The real question is, are Japanese women even interested in dating at all anymore?
Kind of need to figure out if this is the person that you want to be in a relationship with within the first few days. People always say it's within 3 days. Don't kiss, you don't hold hands, you don't touch, you don't have sex whatsoever. And a lot of time, the guy asks the girl if she wants to become her girlfriend. As they say, this is the consensus culture of Japanese dating. And if the girl say yes, they become a couple officially after 3 days. As a Japanese person, it's so crazy to me that in a
Weird.
来ました！本当に
Something's broken in Japan and no one wants to talk about it. Marriage rates plummeting. Birth rates so low the government is literally bribing people to have kids. And at the center of it all, Japanese women who are quietly turning their backs on Japanese men. But why? All right, so there's this idea that Japan is this harmonious, well-oiled machine where everyone plays their role perfectly. A culture of respect, tradition, and duty. But behind closed doors, something is rotting. Japanese men aren't changing, but Japanese women, they are. A recent poll straight up asked Japanese women why they weren't interested in dating Japanese men, and the results were brutal. 48.3% of women said Japanese men have no concept of chivalry. Another 43% said Japanese men don't express affection, just stone-faced, emotionless interactions. No flirting, no compliments, no romance. And if you think that's bad, a quarter of women, 24.7%, complain that Japanese men don't even take initiative in relationships. I want to say real quick, I started this channel to show you the real side of Asia, so don't shoot the messenger. I've got nothing against anyone. Take these data points with a grain of salt, but there are plenty of cases and stories like this all over the internet. Okay, so this one woman described a date with a Japanese guy like hanging out with an office chair. Stiff, and not the good kind of stiff either. They sat, ate, walked, went home. That was it. So, what's going on here? Because at first glance, Japan seems like a dream dating pool. A culture famous for politeness, respect, and discipline. And yet, some Japanese women are looking at their own men and walking away. And here's the part that's making people nervous. Foreign men are stepping into the picture. And Japanese women? Well, not all, but many are noticing.
28% Japanese people who were married to foreigners met their partners online. We can assume that those online tools are not just dating apps, but also social media such as Instagram or language exchanging apps.
See, Japanese women aren't just rejecting their own men for no reason. There are many reasons, and you know that I can't talk about all of them since this video would likely get taken down. But on the surface, some ladies are comparing local men to foreign guys. So imagine this, right? A Japanese woman is dating a Western guy for the first time. He holds the door open. He compliments her. He casually says, "You look beautiful today," and she freezes. But let's not get ahead of ourselves because it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
For some of you, moving to Japan would be a dream come true, right? But interestingly, I know so many people from overseas that moved to Japan and hated it.
You meet a cute girl. She looks like she's in her early 20s, my age, and you kind of hit it off. The more you talk, the more curious you are about her relationship status. Are you taken, or are you single and ready to mingle? Then, as you're talking, she offhandedly informs you that she's actually 37, married, and has 2 kids.
Japanese society has some of the strictest immigration policies in the world. I hate to say this to you, but you will always be a foreigner in Japan. And even if a Japanese woman wants to date a foreign guy, the road ahead is brutal. And here's where things get even darker. Japan has an alternative dating economy. Host clubs, compensated dating, entire industries built around replacing actual relationships with fantasy. Some Japanese men aren't even trying to date anymore. And the government knows this. Japan's birth rate is in free fall. They're throwing money at the problem, offering financial incentives for marriage and kids. Maybe you should go over there and take one for the team.
Let's go.
Jokes aside, many ladies actually worry about being seen as easy. Others fear being treated like a novelty. And then there's the truth no one tells you. Some Japanese women are genuinely afraid of foreign men. I am not joking. But these feelings are not without reason. There have been real cases of foreign guys getting arrested for harassing women. Japanese culture has a huge emphasis on personal space. And us foreign men, we don't always get it. They don't hug casually, they don't touch unnecessarily. And then there's the kokuhaku culture. In Japan, you don't just start dating. There's a whole system. A confession of love. A formal agreement, so to speak. You have to declare your intentions. So where does this leave us? Because at this point, dating in Japan looks like an absolute disaster.
This is strictly my experience in terms of Japanese girls and their willingness to date foreign men. From what I have done in like, whatever, a year and a half here. Let's say 75% of Japanese girls are just not really interested in dating foreigners. They may even be these girls on these videos about dating Westerners who say, they would like to date Westerners or who say that Westerners are handsome, but when it really comes down to it, they haven't actually interacted with that many Westerners. They don't realize how big the culture gap is. They don't realize how difficult it can be to navigate around a language when someone maybe doesn't speak the language or isn't fluent even.
Women aren't happy. Foreign guys aren't fully accepted, and relationships are crumbling left and right. But this isn't just a dating problem. This is a culture problem, a future problem. Japan's entire society is built on a delicate balance, and that balance is breaking. Because if Japanese women continue rejecting Japanese men, what happens next? If birth rates keep dropping? If marriage becomes a thing of the past, also, what the hell will happen with those robot women? A crisis is unfolding in China, and most people don't even see it coming. It started as a harmless matchmaking event. Women arrived in their finest outfits, makeup flawless, all to land a wealthy, high-status husband. But then, nothing happened. I literally mean nothing happened. Not a single man showed up. These women weren't just looking for love. They had demands, some so absurd they almost sounded like satire. A 35-year-old financial worker earning just 600 yen a month wanted a millionaire husband with assets. A 38-year-old entrepreneur? She expected a man to pull in at least 600,000 yen annually, pay all her expenses, and fund 3 vacations a year. And yet, the room remained empty. This event didn't just fail, it exposed something far worse. Relationships in China are no longer about connection. Many have become cold, calculated financial transactions. But here's the brutal truth. The men these women want don't want them. Wealthy men don't go to matchmaking events. They don't need to. You say you need a rich man, but does a rich man need you?
我今年38岁了。
I am 38 years old with a master's degree. I am a high-quality single woman. I originally thought that in Hangzhou, I could find an equally high-quality bachelor. But until I turned 38 this year, I realized that those high-quality single men didn't even look at me. Now, the ones chasing after me are rural bachelors. In other words, if I want to get married, I can only marry into the countryside.
And here's the part no one wants to say out loud. Many of these women have wildly inflated self-worth. Does this remind you of anyone? They believe they are luxury goods deserving of the highest bidder. But what they refuse to acknowledge is that rich men have choices. Many choices. And why would they choose someone demanding, entitled, and obsessed with money when they could be with someone younger, more attractive, and actually interested in them as a person? So what's fueling this madness? Oh, social media. What a shock. Across China, TV shows and influencers have created an alternate reality where every woman deserves a billionaire, and an ordinary life is something to be ashamed of. Stable marriages are collapsing because women think they should be living the fantasy they see on screen. They chase the illusion of status, only to find themselves alone and full of regret. And yet, the delusions persist. Some women openly declare they won't date a man earning less than 4,000 yen a month.
I have never had any prejudice or discrimination against people's professions. But I want to say this. Those guys with a monthly salary of 3,000 to 4,000 yuan, I really hope you will stop coming after me. In the past, the boyfriends I had were wealthy second-generation individuals with annual incomes in the millions. The living conditions were completely different. Moreover, the world of the wealthy second generation is worlds apart from your lives. How could I possibly stand on the same level as you guys? I was once a woman who was protected by an eagle, who had experienced luxurious and decent lives. I can no longer accept a life that is as ordinary as that of a sparrow.
China's dating market isn't just broken, it's imploding. Marriage markets, dating apps, and endless options have led to a paradox. The more choices people have, the less they commit. Men have checked out entirely, seeing marriage as a trap where they give everything and get almost nothing in return.
I'm 42, single, and have been working for 10 years. I've saved 600,000 yuan and live off the interest. I don't plan to exhaust myself for a woman, and I believe staying unmarried is the biggest trend for the next decade. I'm committed to staying single for life. By not marrying, I'm financially free. I avoid all the major expenses: house, car, wedding gifts, family connections, all of which are high cost without benefiting us men directly. As long as I don't get stuck with car loans, house loans, or the pressure to pass on the family line, my 4,000 yuan monthly salary is more than enough for me. If you get married, you're committing to a life of hard work and debt. My life, free and easy. Once you marry, you fall into a debt trap you can never escape. Brothers, I'm telling you, choosing not to marry is your biggest blessing and key to happiness. I spend less than 50 yuan a day, and I'm the wealthiest guy in the village when it comes to cash on hand. Staying single means I don't need to try to win over women or lose my head to love, which could end in financial and emotional loss. I've sidestepped all the risks of marriage from the start. Don't live in someone else's perfect world. Live in your own.
In some regions, divorce rates have skyrocketed to 70%. Meanwhile, women in their 30s and 40s are waking up to a terrifying reality that, by societal standards, they're expired. The younger women they once dismissed are now their competition. Oh, and guess what? The men they rejected years ago, they're no longer interested. And it's not just dating that's collapsing. The economic situation is making everything worse. Across the world, life is getting harder. Costs are rising, salaries aren't keeping up, and financial pressure is crushing younger generations. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, is panicking hard. They've known about the single women crisis for years, but now they're scrambling to fix it. Their solution? Government-backed matchmaking events. But that's just the beginning. There are whispers, deeply unsettling whispers, that China could use AI-driven matchmaking, tying your romantic future to your social credit score. And if that's not alarming enough, there's speculation that single people could face new restrictions pushed into marriage whether they like it or not. If China continues down this path, its population could shrink to 500 million by 2100. That would be a disaster, an aging crisis, labor shortages, and a full-scale economic collapse. The warning signs are everywhere. In 2022, China's marriage rate hit its lowest point since records began, with only 6.8 million couples tying the knot. If trends continue, marriage rates will keep free-falling and the consequences will be irreversible. Faced with this chaos, young people are rejecting the system entirely. They've embraced the lie flat and let it rot movements, choosing to abandon traditional expectations, refusing to marry, refusing to have children, refusing to play the game. And every day, this movement grows stronger, pulling China closer to a demographic disaster.
Sometimes, just because a partner has a slightly bent nose hair, they think it's a deal breaker. This mindset baffles me because, when you were in your 20s, you couldn't find that 100% perfect match. So how can you expect to find it now that you're in your 30s or 40s? I really want to ask you, older single women, who gave you this kind of courage? Is it the female celebrities cheering you on?
So what happens next? If relationships are to survive, both men and women need a reality check. Women need to abandon the fantasy of a perfect man and recognize that true relationships require balance. If a man is bringing financial security, she has to offer something in return. Marriage can't be a one-sided transaction. But here's what's even more concerning. This isn't just China's problem. Trends in China often ripple across the world. The same dynamics, the entitlement, the delusions, the breakdown of traditional relationships are already creeping into the West. And if history tells us anything, it's that once these social patterns take root, they spread fast. The consequences? More men are looking elsewhere. Chinese men are now turning to Southeast Asia, countries like Vietnam, where women hold more traditional values. They're leaving behind the crumbling expectations of modern Chinese dating. And as this trend continues, the landscape of dating and marriage in China and beyond will never be the same again.
Don't date broke in 2025. If you do, you stupid. Because I told you. Date rich in 2025. If they're not rich, if they're not providing, if they're not generous, you don't go out with them. You don't even have a phone conversation with them. Leave them in the dust where they belong.
What's happening right now is something nobody saw coming. Young Japanese women, some barely out of high school, are standing on the streets, openly selling themselves. And the craziest part? Well, many of them are doing this because they are trapped, drowning in debt that shouldn't even exist. So here's a great video I found. I'll add the link below. But there are so many walking videos like this, and you can just tell not everyone is just waiting for a taxi, if you know what I mean.
I've been there in Japan. I've seen those. Like, there's a lot of women in Shinjuku. Broad daylight, bro.
You know, it's like some guys have gotten in debt because of OnlyFans. Well, this is a little like the Japanese version of this, but instead of men, it's women who are the customers. Now, this isn't a story about ladies of the night. It's a story about one of the most insane psychological manipulations in modern society.
When you walk in, they hand you a menu, but instead of food, you are picking guys from some seriously catfish photos. Here is the trick. They don't bring out the main course right away. They start you off with appetizers, usually the guys with the lower sales who come over with small talk and charm to warm you up before the main course arrives. Honestly, I'm not sure where his confidence comes from, but I was really impressed by his dedication. So I decided to open 3 bottles of champagne for him to show my support. So my total expense for today was $5,000. And yeah, that's my Japanese host club experience.
It all starts in Japan's host clubs. Think of a nightclub, but instead of dancing, you sit down, order absurdly overpriced drinks, and the ladies spend the night with an attractive man whose only job is to make you feel like the most special person in the world. There's a ranking system in these clubs. Every woman wants her host to be number 1. And how do they make that happen? Money. Yeah, thousands of dollars a night. Tens of thousands a month sometimes. It's a competition, except the only winner is the guy pocketing the cash.
Yep.
And for the women, the second they stop paying, the fantasy ends. He moves on, finds another girl who will spend the money. And that's when the desperation kicks in. Take Yuka, for example. Not her real name, because her real name is buried in police reports. She was 18 when she met a host. He was older, confident, everything she thought she wanted. At first, he made her feel special. Then, little by little, he's subtly pushing her to spend more. If she didn't, he'd get cold, distant. If she did, he'd shower her with affection. So she kept going, kept paying. Until one day, she checked her bank account. Empty. But she wasn't just broke. She was in debt big time. And her host, he didn't care. He told her, "You should do whatever it takes to pay it back." And of course, as an 18-year-old girl, she listened. That's how she ended up in Kabukicho, standing on the streets, selling herself just to keep up with the payments to give this guy. When the police finally got involved, it wasn't her they arrested.
It's a guy.
It was the host.
Yeah.
This is an entire industry built on weaponized romance.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people in my comments love Japan and will defend it, but I don't care if it's women selling their OnlyFans in America or a guy selling his charm in Japan, it's fucked. If you as a person get stuck in this and end up paying money, even losing your family or house to it, it's messed up. I really don't like the idea of selling this kind of love, or whatever you want to call it. But who should we be mad at? The people selling the service, society, or the people themselves? Take this example I came across. A 30-year-old Japanese woman spent over $10,000 in a single night, just for a few extra minutes with their favorite host. Let that sink in. Some people don't make that in months. She's blowing it on one night. For a guy who's texting 5 other girls the exact same thing. And when the money runs out, it doesn't end there. Because not all women sell themselves to pay off their debt. Some find another way. Enter the Minato women. These are the cute Japanese girls who hang out in Minato Ward, which, for those who don't know, this is one of Tokyo's wealthiest districts. They don't sleep with them. Well, not always. They mainly just exist in their orbit, attending parties, sitting at tables, looking expensive. And for that, they get paid. Some make more in a night than they ever would in a month at a normal job. But the reality is that once you get used to that kind of money, there's no going back. Rent, designer clothes, high-end dining, it all becomes a necessity. And when the money dries up, so does the lifestyle. And just like that, the cycle starts again. And it's not just Tokyo. In Osaka, the same thing was happening well until the police cracked down. But even after authorities shut it down, women just moved to other cities. The system doesn't stop. This is what happens when a society sells the idea that money equals happiness.
My name is Hikaru Aizawa. I am king of host.
As #1 host, I've made as much as 200,000 US a night.
I'd never been to a host club before. I honestly didn't want to because they have a bad reputation. When he is working as a host, he is the perfect man.
Everything I have in my house is gifts from my customers. Everything. Everything. This is the only one in Japan. Serial number 2. The first one is Brad Pitt. Beckham was wearing this and I thought it was cool. I think it was for my birthday. It's about 50,000 US. Limited edition. You see this logo?
His last birthday, I bought him a $7,000 bottle of Japanese shochu. He said he liked the look of it. I have no idea what it tastes like.
Women are looking for non-realistic love, virtual love. They want to have butterflies in their stomach. They want to get excited. They're looking for stimulation.
It's not just Japan. This is happening everywhere, just in different forms. In America, it's sugar daddies. In Dubai, it's influencers being flown out for business trips. But in Japan, it's deep psychology on a new level. This is all a symptom of the same disease. A society that's technically wealthy but emotionally bankrupt. Some of the ladies have bankrupted their parents just to keep paying their host club debts. Imagine that. Imagine your 20-year-old daughter taking out loans in your name just to fund a fake relationship. The Tokyo Metropolitan Police have arrested dozens of women. But what I found interesting is that many of them had the same story. It started with a host. This isn't an underground issue anymore, it's mainstream. Hosts are now celebrities, making headlines, showing off their millions in earnings.
One of the highest paid hosts in Japan is actually a celebrity of sorts. His name is Roland. He's made a brand for himself being the most sought after host. It's said that he makes almost $500,000 per month. In 2018, he threw a birthday party at his host club for his birthday. He made $400,000 that night. People showed up to celebrate him, to buy him drinks, to just fawn over him. And he's a character. He said there are only two types of men, me and the rest. He said, I often stare into a girl's eyes and say, your face is so beautiful, but I'm really looking at my own reflection in the girl's eyes.
Oh, shit.
And you would think, like, when I'm saying it, it sounds crazy. He comes off cocky and annoying. He sounds like the epitome of every guy that girls hate, right? But if you watch the interviews where he says it, his communication, his body language is so playful. It feels like he's not taking it seriously, and it almost makes you feel more comfortable around him.
And nobody is asking the real question, where is all this money coming from? The answer? It's coming from women who can't afford to give it in many cases. Because at the end of the day, it's not about love. It's not even about money. It's about control. The good news, however, is that not every woman standing outside at night is involved in some kind of adult work. Many are actually staff from themed cafes and girls' bars, promoting their venue and inviting customers in for drinks.
Japanese woman does that on her knees.
I'm not Japanese.
When in Kyoto.
Look, will you stop trying to teach me how to behave?
こんにちは、お願いします。圧倒的に顔面で世界一可愛いプリンセスタニョンです。よろしくお願いします。いかがですか？体の 73% 汗です。おじさん、どうですか？今在庫処分セールで 70% オフになっちゃったんです。よかったら受け取ってください。どうですか？
無料一日。
あ、そうだよね。私なんて可愛すぎて関係各所に迷惑がかかっちゃうし、もうメンタルライオンハートだよ。お願いします。ティダンキン。
So yes, this is real. We have now entered the age of renting people, and this seems to be heading for more countries as we look into the future. What do you need, sir? A boyfriend, a girlfriend, a family, or how about fake parents? Despite the uniqueness of the world, countries like Japan and other parts of Asia can always surprise you. And this is exactly what you will feel when you discover this booming industry that's not only growing in Asia, but also other parts of the world. But what is really happening?
Today, I'm going to be renting a girlfriend in Tokyo, Japan.
For this video, I traveled all the way to Japan to rent a boyfriend. And yes, you heard that right.
So whereabouts in Asia is this happening? Well, surprise, surprise. This is actually happening in Japan, China, and South Korea the most. However, there are certain other Southeast Asian countries that have started to pop up agencies that facilitate such transactions. Really? When you want to rent people, there are a few different options. The first type is the romantic rental. So this is when you rent a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and clients will meet their companion, go on a date, go for a walk, take photos, and can even practice dating.
前に言ってくれてたことを覚えてるのは嬉しいですよね。でもなんかちょっと上にあるとかわいそうかなと思って。ずっとね、いるんだけどね。
Then there are family rentals, which are slightly different. Family rentals are when you can rent a mother, father, brother, sister, or the extended family. This is often used for social appearances, especially in countries like China, where there's a lot of social pressure.
0歳から上は85歳くらいまでの幅広い年齢層がいらっしゃいますね。
0歳でレンタル家族に登録できるんですか？
ありますね。やはりその赤ちゃんが必要な方って実はいたりするんですよ。その赤ちゃんを直接雇うんじゃなくて、結局はですね、そのお母さんがもともとスタッフで。
Another growing market is friend rentals. And this tends to be for events, overcoming loneliness, and even used for social media purposes. Have you seen those guys with a Lamborghini and normally two hot women either side? Yeah, well, I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't just the Lambo that was rented out. The booking process follows, and customers will browse websites to find profiles, including pictures, descriptions, and pricing. Once you decide to meet your companion, The meetings often take place in public locations. In most countries like Japan, where there is an industry around this profession, there are also clear boundaries. All above-ground agencies state the dates are strictly platonic, which means that these services in the majority of countries are completely legal because your joystick doesn't get handled, but there are certainly gray areas, and both men and women clients have been known to test their rental boyfriends or girlfriends, which is likely the reason there are certain rules in place. Just like real dates, bad dates happen. Companions often have to follow strict rules, which includes not getting too personal or revealing too much information about themselves, and some agencies want their companion to keep the past clients a secret. A lot of agencies have additional rules depending on the person. Very interestingly, I found that regarding renting a boyfriend, many companies don't allow men to rent other men on dates, but had no problem with women renting other women. So it got me thinking, why do people even do this in the first place? One word: loneliness. It's well known that many countries in Asia suffer with serious social problems. This tends to happen in Japan, China, and Southeast Asia. So, it's no surprise that many of these services exist. Most of us are independent, and let's be real, family values over recent years have changed, even if there is pressure from parents or family. It's not something we have to deal with on a daily basis. In places like China, pressure from parents can be huge. You can have all the diamonds in the world, but if you're still single, you're a failure in some people's eyes. I must admit, though, that having lived across Asia for many years, I've seen just how much some people suck at dating. This is not their fault, but due to overworking, lack of experience, or low confidence, it's hard for these people to chat to others in real life. These services, where they offer a companion, often make it much easier for them to connect. And let's not forget, some people pay $13 to have a 5-second hug. No joke, CNN did a video about this.
I'm about to rent an old man. I'm here in Japan to buy a house, but to be happy here, I'm gonna need friends, so I'm gonna rent one. Japan being Japan, it wasn't entirely surprising to find that old people are available for rent.
This takes me to a recent story about Nick. He stumbled upon the Asus rental service. This is basically renting a middle-aged man for anything from casual conversations to attending events together. Nick said, the idea felt strange, but intriguing. Back home in the US, paying for companionship usually carried a certain stigma. But in Japan, this was different. Curious and eager to experience something unique, Nick scrolled through the website, browsing profiles of men available for hire.
Gay!
Just kidding. But that's when he found Sakurai, a 58-year-old man. For just 1,000 yen per hour, which is about $7, Nick could spend the day with Sakurai. As they walked, Nick learned that many of Sakurai's clients weren't tourists like him. Some were businessmen who wanted an unbiased listener. Others were elderly women looking for someone to talk to. A few were single mothers who just needed help running errands. The reasons varied, but at the core of it, people were simply searching for connection. You'd be surprised how many people just want someone to listen, Sakurai told him over a plate of sushi. So how much are these rental humans charging for their service? Well, the cost depends on the time and the person. If you are renting a girlfriend or renting a boyfriend, the cost will depend on the popularity of the person and their looks. Some services could be as low as $5 to $8 an hour, while others can cost around $100 an hour. But there are additional costs that need to be considered. If you are hiring a date or a person, you will need to pay for their expenses. But some people tend to go for a walk, which requires no additional costs. From researching agencies and speaking to people who have used this service, it's clear that some clients book repeatedly. You can find some great deal with renting a middle-aged man or dad.
What fatherly advice would you give me?
Oh. Do you not get married yet?
Not yet.
Why not you get married first? Like this?
Yeah.
The father, right?
Yeah.
And also, okay, I need grandchildren.
You need grandchildren.
To be honest, if you go to Asia, it's almost like a tour guide, right? But it's a little bit more personal. I think it's a pretty cheap way to enjoy your time. I tell you, it's not about the places you go, but who you go with that you will remember. So the big question is, can you do this? Well, each country has its own criteria, but you can, as a foreigner, rent yourself out. Specifically in Asia, most countries such as South Korea, Japan, and other countries would prefer their companion to speak the local language, and most locals will only speak their local language. The second type of customers are foreigners, and typically, foreigners would prefer a local person, but this is not always the case. Assuming you're able to speak the local language, another hurdle you may face is the legal right to work. But there are ways around this across many countries. Some people also offer services of being a listener, a friend, a girlfriend, or a boyfriend online. But I'll be honest, I can see these services increasing. Can you imagine renting a Karen service where you rent someone just to be a complete bitch? During research, I thought maybe this is a bit of a weird idea, and I might be the only one who sees this as positive. So I did some research, and I found this one guy who said that for only $5 a month, he will comment, "That's a stupid idea every time your boss posts something on social media." Whether this is a joke or not, I can see this service really taking off. And interestingly, I also found that just like real-life dates, it is possible for rental boyfriends and girlfriends to get stood up by customers. And if you are a companion and you are popular, you may be going on as much as 4 to 7 dates per week, meaning you are constantly meeting new people and staying in boyfriend mode.
I like that. My father, my wife, and my daughter.
Yes.
And they will be my family while I'm in Japan. If I'm really enjoying my fake family, what's the maximum amount of time I can retain their services?
3年.
3 years? I could have them for 3 years? You don't need to check with her? She's 12. My current family won't give me 3 more years.
But without a doubt, things can certainly get a little dark and depressing. There has been reports that some clients have fallen in love with their companion. Some customers try to get their date to admit their real feelings, or see if the companion will date for free after the session ends. Some also believe that they have exclusive connections, even though their boyfriend or girlfriend dates multiple people per day. What is really sad is that for some clients, ending the rental date feels like a real breakup. This is because since the service is designed to feel real, customers can sometimes experience real emotions similar to an actual breakup. And there have been situations where customers have cried, got upset, and tried to continue the relationship outside of the professional boundaries. So the question is, would you rent a boyfriend or a girlfriend if you had a partner? Would you still see this as cheating? I don't know. It's just like a friend or a tour guide in many cases. But some people do see it as cheating. This woman found out her boyfriend went to Japan to rent a girlfriend and was not happy. The #1 comment with 172 upvotes said that he's cheating. It does seem suspicious, and out of respect, it's likely not something you would probably do to someone you really cared about, but let's be real. These are glorified tour guides for most foreigners. These are not people you have relationships with. And I wonder if people would still see it as cheating if they were renting a boyfriend, or perhaps a middle-aged man. Most likely not, but while we're on Reddit, I thought I would see what the internet has to say about this, and I wasn't left disappointed. Most people on Reddit and other social media seem to believe that renting a girlfriend is exactly the same as escorting, also known as renting a lady of the night. But as we know, that is not the case. Some people say that it's really sad. One guy even called this pathetic. Some say that it will likely make lonely people feel even worse after they've experienced it. I tend to agree with the latter point slightly, but the more I research the service, the more I come to find it pretty fun and harmless for most people. There is not much on the internet about some truly bizarre and weird requests from clients, but the rules of these agencies leave us with clues. Common rules include no personal contact or exchanging information such as social media. Companions are also not allowed to enter the client's house. There is to be no gifts or exchange of money, and no falling in love. Yes, this is actually a rule with some agencies. And lastly, no intimacy. So the question is, would you rent someone? Is this such a bad idea after all?
Well, that's an interesting suggestion. I wonder what caused this.
Y'all bye. Don't do it. You know what that means. You know what that means.
You walk in as a foreigner, they don't know you, but they start speaking Japanese to you. And you speak English to them, and they continue insisting on speaking Japanese. If you ask them about it, they'll say, oh, Toko wa Nihon, this is Japan. Well, I'm sorry, I just heard you speaking to your coworker in your language.
In the last few years, places like Tokyo have become a hotspot for these repulsive creatures called influencers. But let's not forget live streamers who also insist on streaming everything and getting in the face of your everyday Japanese person. There are a lot of people out there who love Japan and its people, but you might be shocked to find this love is not a two-way street. But it's not only because of these morons. There's a lot more to it. You could spend 10 years, 20 years, even a lifetime in Japan. You could speak fluent Japanese, bow at the perfect angle, wear the right clothes, and obey every cultural norm down to the last detail. But in the eyes of society, you will never truly belong. I know some of you just want the rapid-fire TLDR on this, so here are the reasons. Breaking unspoken social rules, being loud in public spaces, fetishizing Japanese people or culture, ignoring queuing etiquette, assuming all Japanese people love anime, sushi, samurai culture, speaking too directly, talking on the phone in public transport, eating while walking, being overly friendly or touchy, complaining about Japan while living there, dressing too casually in formal settings, not following proper bathing etiquette and nonsense, being seen as taking local jobs, dating too many locals, getting drunk and acting out in public, littering or not following trash separation rules, acting entitled as a tourist. But anyways, no matter how much you respect the culture, no matter how deeply you immerse yourself, Japan has an invisible line, and the second you were born outside of it, you were locked out forever. Some smart people figure it out the moment they arrive. Others spend years trying to blend in before reality punches them in the face. And the worst part? Nobody tells you. There's no warning, no sign, no dramatic confrontation. There's just a strange feeling. A slow, creeping realization that no matter what you do, you will always be an outsider. This is really hard to get across, but someone please back me up in the comments so I don't sound crazy. Some people experience this in their first week. They step onto a crowded train looking for a seat. The train is packed, every seat taken, except for one. Yeah, you're right, it's the one next to them. At first, they think it's a coincidence. Maybe someone just got up. Maybe people prefer standing. But station after station, new passengers get on, glance at the empty seat, and keep walking. That's when it clicks. The gaijin seat phenomenon. For some, it's subtle. And it raises the question, why? Is it racism? A subconscious reaction? A fear of the blacks or the whites? Some say it's nothing personal, that Japanese people just avoid all strangers. But if that were true, why do they sit next to each other? Yeah, and it's not just public transport. The divide runs deeper, because Japan doesn't tell you when you've broken a social rule. It's crazy, I know, but no one will scold you unless you do something really stupid. Instead, in most situations, they just move away. See, Japan has rules that no one tells you about until you break them. And sadly, many of us foreigners do. Sitting on the floor in public, uncivilized. Walking too slow and blocking pedestrian traffic, selfish. Showing up even 5 minutes late, might as well have slapped someone's grandma. And whatever you do, do not talk to strangers in line. But the biggest offense? Smelling bad. Japan has a term for it, smell harassment.
That Japan has a national crisis of smelly people in the workplace. They reported that Japanese workplaces are so worried about odor that they're having something called smelly harassment or sumehara, and that they're even having seminars to teach people how to smell good. And all I can say is, what the
Too much perfume, too much deodorant. Even natural body odor can make people uncomfortable. And instead of saying anything, they'll just slowly back away. The rejection isn't always subtle. Some foreigners, even after years of living in Japan, still get asked the same question. When are you going back home? It's not even meant as an insult. It's just assumed that one day you'll leave. That's when people realize no matter how much they love Japan, Japan does not love them back. And for some, it gets worse. There are places in Japan where foreigners simply aren't allowed. Kyoto's famous Gion district, tourists were banned because too many foreigners were harassing geishas, grabbing their accessories, snapping photos like they were in a human zoo. Some small businesses refuse service to foreigners, not out of hatred, but because they don't want to deal with the awkwardness. But there's another side to this story, because while some foreigners struggle to be accepted, others thrive.
Tell me your tale.
I was born in Shanghai. You know Shanghai?
Love Japan.
There are people who have lived in Japan for decades, who speak better Japanese than the locals, who have adopted the culture so fully that they're indistinguishable. Mixed-race individuals who have spent their entire lives in Japan, who speak Japanese as their first language, still get treated like outsiders. If even they aren't truly accepted, what chance does a foreigner have? To share some good news with you, some people do love it here. They see Japan's social rules not as restrictions, but as a structured way of life. They don't care about the invisible divide because they never expected to be fully accepted in the first place.
Where are you originally from?
I'm from Arizona. Specifically, I was around the Phoenix area. Lived there for most of my life. Based in Japan for about 2 years now.
What do you think of Japan?
I love every second of being here. I mean, it's definitely the most amazing place in the world.
In terms of cost of living, do you think Japan is expensive or cheap compared to the US?
I would say that the cost of living is still much, much cheaper than the US, everywhere.
Number one, Japan has some of the most gorgeous nature I have ever seen, with the most beautiful traditions inside of the country. Like, I want to explore so much of Japan still. Number two are the people, because I personally find that Japanese people are some of the kindest and genuinely most helpful people I have ever encountered. Number three is the convenience. Obviously, this only applies to the cities, big cities specifically, but I love the extensive transportation systems that they have, especially like Tokyo or Osaka or any other big city in Japan.
Also, the younger generations are more open, more connected to the world. The rigid traditions that once defined Japan are slowly breaking down, and yet that invisible wall, it's still there. So the real question is, will it ever come down? Maybe Japan will see foreigners as more than just outsiders. Maybe one day the word gaijin will disappear completely. But until then, if you ever step onto a crowded train and that seat next to you stays empty, you'll know exactly where you stand.
なんでみんなスタッフ頭使わないよ。人間でしょ。みんな頭いいでしょ。人間頭いいよ。なんで忙しいところみんなスタッフやるわ。六本木行って渋谷行ってやるみんな。最悪頭使わない人は最悪じゃん。それ終わり。頭覚えて言ってること。頭覚えて言ってること。なんで？なんでルールそのままするわバカのルールバカなルールそれやバカ
Seen.
Will it?
頭いいでしょバカ
Sierra
South Korean politicians are all morons! They will do literally everything to try and fix their birth rate problem rather than getting to the main cause. The literally everything includes a politician promoting Kegel exercises or suggesting girls start school a year earlier than boys to make them more appealing. What? What the fuck are you talking about?
Cause I heard that it was a kid diddler. Yeah, I heard that it was a pedophile.
If you ever watched any of Bong Joon-ho's movies, you would know that the main message of all of his amazing movies is South Korea is a fucked up place. This country is literally ran by Samsung, LG, and Hyundai Kia. They have a horrible work and school culture, but by far the most important quote-unquote challenge they face is the horribly low birth rate they have. It is the worst in the world, and it's recently plummeted down to 0.72 births per woman. A country needs a birth rate of 2.1 to keep their current population, let alone grow it. And they're at 0.72. So why do the South Korean women not want to make babies with these handsome, rich, cute little twinks? They fuck with the other guy. They ask me to give up my seed. South Korea is miles ahead in misogyny technology than every other country in the world. Among Korean men, there is a widespread perception that designated seats for pregnant women are an excessively female-friendly policy, to the point where it became a trend on the internet to protest this policy by posting photos of dudes sitting in these seats as a form of protest. Imagine you're a woman in South Korea, right? You already have these unbelievable, unrealistic beauty standards where to be considered pretty, you have to be basically a supermodel. South Korea has the most plastic surgeries per capita in the world, with over 1 million operations happening every year, and with every 1 in 4 women aged 19 to 29 already having plastic surgery done, with men being 2%. On top of this, these motherfuckers decide to give you the largest wage gap on the planet for your hard work, and they only decriminalize abortion in 2021, 3 years ago. It's not legal now, but it's not illegal either. Me personally, if I was a woman, I would be crashing out and tweaking. Man, fuck men in particular, but not literally, which is how the 4B movement spawned, which means no dating, marriage, childbirth, or sex with dudes. And when your country's laws about women are written by John Jones and Harvey Weinstein, with intense misogyny, discriminatory laws, and the highest wage gap in the world, it is no surprise this movement spawned in South Korea. You know what does not help either? South Korea being the most expensive place in the world to raise a child, costing around $270,000 to raise a child until the age of 18. In second place is the glorious People's Republic of China. Taiwan, South Korea, your destiny is to be obliterated into nothing by a Chinese Dongfeng missile. South Korea has this phenomenon called academic elitism, where basically if you don't go to the best universities they have to offer, your life is basically over. You're gonna get a shitty job, no money, you'll be sucking dick behind the KFC on Daihakro Street for money. And then there are the Sky Universities, Seoul, Korea, and Yonsei Universities. Whether or not you get into one of these 3 universities decides your financial and social position in the country for the rest of your life. It's like parkour civilization. So there's a huge pressure on the Korean youth to get into one of these, which is why private tutoring has a whole term for it called hagwons, and why it's a $20 billion industry. Because every parent, no matter their financial capability, wants their child to succeed. And since Korean society is set up in a way where you need to go into the sky schools, Korean households spend more on private tutoring than housing and food. Because of these exorbitant prices, households can barely afford 1 kid, let alone more. And they also probably don't want to put their kids through the same education hellhole they went through. An 8-hour entrance exam? Real question. 48 hours with Diddy or 8-hour entrance exam that decides the rest of your life? Discuss in the comments below. The Korean entrance exam, CSAT, aka Kokskibidi ass torture, literally has killer questions that are bullshit questions just to make the student scores lower. A lot of times these questions aren't included in normal schools either, but are only included in these private tutoring schools. So already, if your kid is not in those expensive private cram schools, he's set back by this capitalist shithole called South Korea. And these killer questions are either some insane diluted algebra questions that have not been solved by any mathematician ever, or some obscure literary takeouts. What did Tyler respond to Kai Cenat when Kai asked her out on a date? Oh my god, bro. They only decided to remove these questions last year, so good job job on that, but Koreans still spend nearly $20 billion a year on these private tutoring schools. Usually what happens in a normal Korean teen's day is they go to school from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., already 8 hours of classes, and then goes to the private cram school, which usually goes from 6 to 9, already 11 hours of classes, and then the rest of the day is spent studying at home before falling asleep and lacking on sleep. A lot of people estimate that they spend 12 to 17 hours a day just studying. Hey, why are the fertility rates low? Bro, if you told me I had to study 15 hours a day, the last thing on my mind would be making kids. I want to make kids out of spite of what this world has to offer, because why would I want to let my kids go through this hellhole called studying in South Korea? A big part of their demographic crisis is that they are extremely urbanized, and as all problems, it always comes down to fucking real estate. Over half of South Korea lives in the Seoul metropolitan area, because that's where all the Sky universities are, so everyone who wants to live well has to live in Seoul, and also because there are a bunch of construction restrictions that don't allow for a lot of housing to be built, so the limited housing in Seoul is basically a bidding war between Samsung higher-ups, normal South Koreans, and the guy from Squid Game. And the bidding war usually ends in the Samsung higher-ups buying these apartments, renting it to normal South Koreans for huge sums of money, and the guy from Squid Game sucking dick behind the Shake Shack in Yonge district for 2,500 won so he can keep chain smoking his SA lights. In 1928, Stalin started the first 5-year plan, and the goal was to move these stupid, dumb, illiterate peasant farmers out from the farms and get them into cities where there was big industry and make them make tractors and a bunch of other cool shit. By moving illiterate peasants out from these big farms and cramming them into apartments, the Soviet Union's birth rate crashed. In peasant farmer societies, children are usually encouraged because they're more of a free labor and not as much of a financial burden. However, in cities, raising children is expensive and you also don't get a large family to help with farming. You're all alone in that Samsung factory, resulting in this, where you can clearly see that the fertility rates in big cities are much lower than their less urbanized areas. In Vienna's airport, they made the benches purposefully uncomfortable to keep people from sleeping on it. A real dedicated sleeper like me will never succumb to the capitalist invention of anti-homeless infrastructure. And even though these metal rods were hitting me straight in my hips, I had an amazing 8-hour-long sleep in this airport. Governments will spend hundreds of thousands of dollars building anti-homeless infrastructure just for me to sleep on it, when the only anti-homeless infrastructure that works is giving the homeless homes. And yeah, South Korea is cooked on all fronts. Not only everything I mentioned, but also their views are literally the complete opposite of women. It's like the South Korean male population thinks women are their enemy, because what even is this divide? It's literally just two opposite extremes, and the chances of them getting along to the point where they would want to have children is slim to none. Because of this toxic work, education, and dating culture, South Korea has the highest self-end rate in a first world country. Recently, I went out for a walk in Tbilisi with Geopol, discussing important topics such as Diddy and Skibbity Toilet. And when I came back to my apartment, my Lenovo monitor had broken itself. Hong Kong had disappointed me. The warranty people told me it would take 3 weeks to order me a new one, and I would genuinely rather be waterboarded than not have access to my computer for 3 weeks. So I went ahead and got a new Samsung monitor. With this, I contributed to the mafia, not so secretly running the country of South Korea. In 2017, the son of the chairman of Samsung literally bribed the president for a corporation favor that would benefit Samsung, and then got exposed for it. The president got overthrown and Lee got sentenced to 5 years in prison. Then they reduced it to 2.5 years and released him after serving only 1 year in prison. Then, for some reason, he had a retrial about this, got sentenced back to prison for 2 years and 6 months. And then when there was a global chip shortage in the world, Joe Biden went to South Korea because America needed more chips, and the new president of South Korea pardoned the chairman of Samsung, and now he leads Samsung. I'm really liking this monitor though. Like, look, I can rotate it and watch Instagram reels like this. I don't know what it would take for the South Korean government to realize that their ultra-capitalist society is the cause for all their difficulties, such as being an incel, pulling 2014 ISIS numbers, and the real estate market being horrible. Also, the 3 big companies, but mainly Samsung, have so much power over there that every politician is there to serve Samsung's interests and not not the South Korean people. You guys already saw how Samsung literally bribed the president with $37 million, and that is only one of the things they have been exposed for. Just imagine how many secret deals have been taking place with Samsung's leaders and Korean politicians. I do not care how much money you have. If you're going to be alone for the rest of your life and also hold some extreme beliefs about the opposite sex and also never be able to own a home for yourself, no matter how much money you have either way, because Samsung exists, what's the point? And government-funded matchmaking events to try and get people to talk to each other is not going to fix the fact that even if they really liked each other, they wouldn't be able to afford the home because Samsung keeps buying up all the property to the point where they have their own little town dedicated to themselves. But a bunch of corporations have their own office towns. This isn't my big beef with them. I hope my Samsung monitor does not shut itself off using their Samsung AI to detect the words I'm writing and fucking explode my monitor. Because people in Korea get born in the Samsung medical
Previously in Japan. Japan has the most unhinged game shows on the planet. People getting smacked in the face by giant rubber hands, running up greased staircases while getting pelted with dodgeballs, biting into random objects to see if they're secretly made of chocolate. It's pure chaos. No life-changing prizes, no sob stories, just people getting wrecked for everyone else's entertainment. I love it. And it's addictive. The pain, the humiliation, the absurdity, it's all dialed up to the max. But here's the thing. The deeper you go into Japan's reality TV scene, the weirder it gets. What starts as harmless slapstick slowly morphs into something else. Something way darker. Because somewhere along the way, the question stopped being, how do we make this funny? And became, how far can we push people before they break? At first, it was all about public humiliation. Contestants getting blasted with air cannons, dunked in freezing water, or thrown into absurd pranks where they're chased by fake dinosaurs while their coworkers pretend nothing's happening. Funny, right? But then you get to the human slingshot. A contestant sits in a chair, the countdown begins. They don't know what's about to happen. And then boom! And here's the catch. Some of them didn't even know what they signed up for. But that was just the warm-up act. Because when Japan got into reality TV, that's when things really went off the rails. Oh my God! Let's talk about Real Love, a dating show where contestants have to reveal their darkest secrets on national television before they can even start dating. Yeah, sounds like a fun little twist, right? Until you realize these aren't cute confessions like I talk to my plants. These are real life-destroying secrets. Stuff like, I used to be in a cult. Or I scammed old people out of their savings. And now you have to sit across from someone you were hoping to date and decide if you can live with their baggage while the entire country watches.
Wow.
Spoiler. It never ends well. The whole thing is designed to crash and burn. But at least Real Love lets you make your own choices. The Future Diary doesn't. This one takes two strangers and forces them to follow a scripted love story. Everything is pre-written. The meet cute, the first kiss, the romantic moments, they don't happen naturally. They happen when the producers say so. And if the people involved aren't feeling it, too bad. And it gets worse. Love Village is a dating show for older contestants, so this is normally people in their 30s, 40s, even 50s. So you'd think it would be more mature, right?
Yeah.
Nope. It's just as engineered, except now the heartbreak is even messier because these people have real-life baggage. It's not about helping anyone find love. It's about watching them get rejected in the most brutal way possible. This reminds me a bit of TLC. Oh, and by most brutal way possible. It's not about helping anyone find love. It's about watching them get rejected in the most brutal way possible. This reminds me a bit of TLC. Oh, and by the way, not all of these contestants are random people. A lot of them are recycled. Same faces, different shows. Some are actors, influencers, entertainers that are planted there to stir up drama. So don't feel so bad, because even a lot of the suffering is fake. But the audience doesn't care. They just want to watch the chaos unfold. But even all of that, forced love stories, public humiliation, psychological warfare, it still doesn't compare to what they did to Nasubi. Nasubi was an aspiring comedian who thought he was joining a private social experiment. They locked him in a tiny, empty room. No food, no clothes, nothing. Just a stack of magazines, a pen, and one rule. If he wanted to eat, he had to win his own meals by entering sweepstakes. He thought this would last a few weeks. It lasted over a year. And the whole time, he had no idea that millions of people were watching him. His breakdowns, his starvation, his slow unraveling, it was all being broadcast across Japan. And when he finally won his freedom, they tricked him again. They blindfolded him, flew him to what he thought was South Korea, then dumped him into another fake scenario for one last humiliation. They squeezed every last drop of misery out of him before finally letting him go. And that's the real horror of all this. Japan isn't alone in making brutal reality TV. The US has The Bachelor, Dr. Phil, The Biggest Loser, and the shows that thrive on public humiliation and emotional breakdowns. But here's the difference I noticed. Western reality TV leans into the drama. Japan leans into suffering. American producers want fights, betrayals, and meltdowns. Japanese producers want to see how much someone can take before they mentally collapse. And the scariest part, it works. Because every time you think they've gone too far, they just push the line even further. Locked rooms, fake relationships, public humiliation, and people keep watching. Actually, during the research, I found so many ideas and concepts for TV shows that either got canceled or never even made it past the planning stage.
Ow! I don't know which way the horse goes! Ah!
Why is that guy laughing at me, and where is he? There was a time limit? Nobody told me that.
Time for good door, bad door.
Wait, how bad is the bad door?
Some of these shows were so insane that even networks known for pushing boundaries took one look and said, yeah, thanks, but no, we're not touching that. And that should tell you something. Because when you have executives, people who greenlight shows like Fear Factor and Naked and Afraid, saying, this is too much, you know whatever was planned had to be beyond messed up. So the real question, why do we love watching people suffer? At what point do we admit that reality TV isn't about reality at all? It's about pushing people to their absolute limit, just to see what happens. And if the industry is willing to go this far for ratings, believe me, they're only just getting started.
Views.
And he's gonna buy me anything I want while we're out here. Isn't that right?
Let's go.
You may have come across the term sugar daddies, but on the flip side, there are tons of Asian sugar mamas out there looking for a single man, and they've got the money to make it happen. One dating app has over 6,000 registered sugar mamas. The trend is booming in places like Bangkok, Hong Kong, and Singapore. So, what's happening? In a world where much of the Western population struggles with finances, a very different story is unfolding in parts of Asia. Places like Tokyo, Singapore, and Hong Kong are home to a growing number of financially independent women. But here's the problem. If you search for this online, you won't find much. The stories are rare, almost hidden. Unlike sugar daddies, financially independent women in these roles don't often make headlines. It's not something you can easily Google. Another issue is that this often breeds scams, with people pretending to be sugar mamas just as often as sugar daddies. All these examples are scams in the sugar space. Most of the time, scammers will send money, like $500, and ask the victim to forward $300 to a charity while keeping the rest. The catch? The charity is actually their account, and the original $500 is fraudulent. So how do people find a real, legit sugar mama? First, they don't abandon sugar mama apps entirely, as there are legitimate people using them. Instead, they follow some key strategies. The first rule, they focus on their appearance. In Asia, beauty standards differ greatly. While tattoos and big muscles might attract attention in California, they often don't have the same appeal in places like Tokyo. Men here tend to prioritize skincare, maintain a fit but refined physique, and carry an air of elegance. Locations matter too. Upscale bars and exclusive private events provide excellent opportunities to meet potential connections. However, most of these encounters happen through word of mouth. Friends of friends, casual introductions, or chance meetings are the most common ways people enter this world. A great source of information about sugar babies and sugar mamas.
Cameras inside those rental houses and rooms. Tonight, a couple on their honeymoon says they found a camera in the bedroom of their Airbnb they were staying in.
This is going to mess you up. You ever get that weird feeling like someone's watching you? Yeah, well, they probably are. And I don't mean in some big brother is always watching kind of way. I mean like right now, in your house, in your hotel, in that Airbnb you booked last summer. There's a very real chance a camera was recording you while you were sleeping, showering, or I don't know, getting freaky. And the worst part, you wouldn't even know. Why not, though? Well, because these cameras, they're tiny, and they're everywhere. They look like chargers, smoke detectors, alarm clocks, paintings. Hell, some of them are built into the walls.
I found another one. You're kidding? No, I'm not. In the bathroom, guys, look. So we've just got to our Airbnb, and we think we've found a camera.
And once that footage is recorded, that's it. It's out there. You can't get it back. And I'm not saying this to freak you out for fun. I mean, I am, but also because this is real. Like, terrifyingly real. Let me tell you about one case that'll make you want to burn your entire house down. A guy in Singapore, normal guy, married, kid, the whole deal. He buys a spy camera that looks like a USB charger. Harmless, right? Except no. He plants it in his teenage daughter's bedroom. The guy had 155 videos of his own daughter. And when he got caught, his excuse was that he just wanted to monitor her studying. Yeah, well, the police checked. Not one video of her studying. And the way he got caught? His wife. She used his laptop one day, probably looking for a file or whatever, and she just found them. That moment, that realization. Like, imagine sitting there scrolling through files and then suddenly realizing, oh my God, that's my daughter. That's my husband recording my daughter. She sat on that for 3 weeks before she finally went to the cops. Maybe she was in shock. Maybe she didn't know what to do. But when she did, that guy's entire life collapsed. Now he's facing 2 years in jail per charge, plus fines, plus caning. Yeah, caning. Singapore doesn't play around. But when I first learned about this, I was like, well, yeah, it's messed up, but that's just one guy, right? Well, little did I know, it's not even scratching the surface of how big this problem is. In some places, it's an epidemic. South Korea? Oh boy. South Korea is ground zero for this kind of thing. They even have a name for it, Molka. And this isn't just some strange person hiding cameras for fun. This is an organized industry. There was this one case where criminals installed spy cameras inside a hotel room. Yeah, so these cameras were in hairdryer holders, wall sockets, digital TV boxes, and the footage was live streamed to paying customers. The reports show that they filmed over 800 couples before they got caught. And what does the data say? Well, South Korea had nearly 6,500 spy cam crimes in a single year. So, of course, the government tried to stop it. They passed laws that make it illegal for smartphones to take silent photos. This means that every phone in South Korea makes a loud shutter sound when taking a picture by law. I'm not joking, but guess what? That didn't stop anything. It just made people get more creative. Now you've got spy cameras disguised as pens, watches, paintings, lighters, smoke detectors. Literally anything. This is like James Bond, but dark. Oh, by the way, you can just buy them. No ID check, no registration, nothing. One shop owner in Incheon said he's sold thousands of them over the years. Thousands. And he swears he only sells to trustworthy buyers. Yeah, okay, that's totally reassuring. And if you think that's bad, let's talk about China. Because if South Korea is bad, China is insane. There was this case in Huzhou. 5 guys set up spy cameras in hotels and guest houses and started selling the footage online. They made about 40 grand before they got caught. In another case, police found 100,000 plus illegal recordings from 300 hidden cameras inside lamps, TVs, air conditioners, power sockets, everywhere. And listen, this is big business. There is a black market for hotel spy cam footage. Like straight up. Videos labeled hotel spy cam and real-time monitoring are openly sold online. Some of these networks are so well organized that they even have customer service hotlines to help customers with payments and subscriptions. Yeah. Imagine calling customer support because your spy cam subscription isn't working. That's the world we live in. And if you think China is bad, Japan is next level. This one guy spent years secretly filming women in hot springs. How? He hid cameras in fake rocks. And I'm not talking about just sticking a GoPro inside a rock. He handcrafted realistic fake rocks from clay and plastic, disguised the wiring with brown tape, powered them with hidden batteries, dressed like a mountain climber, and hid behind camouflage nets to avoid detection. And the result? He got 1,000 victims on tape, and when police finally caught him, his sentence? 2 years. And it's not just Japan. This is everywhere.
I found this in an Airbnb I was staying at and obviously immediately rang up the cop since obviously it's incredibly illegal to just be watching people. And sure enough, they arrested the owner of the Airbnb, got a search warrant, and found a hard drive under their sink with terabytes of footage of other guests and a lot of weird stuff. But this was just the beginning because they found over 15 mini spy cameras. Like, can you believe their shower head had a camera? Like, where do you even fit that?
Airbnb? Massive problem. A newlywed couple from China found a hidden camera inside a power socket at their Airbnb in Malaysia. The camera was facing their bed. They only found it by accident. And when they reported it, police allegedly told them to delete their social media post. And it's not just them. Airbnb guests keep finding cameras. A survey found that 58% of renters are worried about being recorded, and for good reason. Some of these hosts aren't just watching, they're selling the footage. And here's where things get really dark. The spy camera industry is booming. The global market for IP cameras is expected to hit $43.6 billion by 2034. These devices are getting smaller, smarter, and harder to detect. Some work in complete darkness, some stream live video. You can buy a hidden camera detector for like $40 on Amazon. But how many people actually do? If you're staying in a hotel using a public bathroom, renting an Airbnb, you have no idea who's watching, no clue where the cameras are. And once that footage is out there, it's out there forever. This is the world we live in.
So I'm staying at this hotel tonight, and I think I just found a camera in the bathroom. This is ridiculous. Hold on, look at this. So I was just checking things out, and I looked up in here, and like if you look in the back, you can actually see it.
The point of this video isn't to make you paranoid. It's not about making you think that every hotel room, Airbnb, or changing room, it has a hidden camera recording your every move, because that's just not true. But let's be real. Every time I post a video like this, there's always that 1% in the comments saying it's misleading or exaggerated. And I get it. Some of this stuff sounds insane. But everything I talk about is based on real data, real experiences, either my own or from thousands of other people who've lived through it. It's massive. Especially in Asia, where thousands of cases have already been exposed, and those are just the ones we know about. People go on vacation, they travel for work, they stay in hotels, guest houses, rentals, completely unaware that someone might be watching them. And it's not just places you stay in. Even your own home security cameras, your baby monitors, your Wi-Fi connected devices, they can all be hacked if they're not properly secured. So what can you do? First, if you're staying somewhere new, check for unusual objects, especially anything that looks like it's pointed at the bed or the bathroom. Hidden cameras are often disguised as chargers, alarm clocks, smoke detectors, even screw heads in walls. If you're unsure, best thing to do is to turn off all the lights and use your phone's flashlight camera lens. This is because they will often reflect back at you. You can also scan for cameras using an RF detector or even a simple phone app that looks for suspicious Wi-Fi signals. And if you find something, report it. Get the hell out of there. At the end of the day, you can't control how many watchers are out there, but you can be aware.
Shower, bathrooms. It's probably not going to be right in here in the floor in the very bottom where I can't see anybody on the bathroom or in the shower. It's going to be somewhere around, okay, did they do anything that stands out here? Is there anything on the ceiling? Always look up. Anything that stands out here. Is there anything on the ceiling? Always look up.
Chinese international student in my class was telling me about how his evangelical dad in Beijing believes that Trump was chosen by God to win the election, but that this victory is part of a larger divine plan to destroy the United States. I cannot afford eggs, therefore all immigrants must is a conclusion that some governments and people have reached throughout history, such as Germany in the 30s, America now, and Germany now as well. The reason why I like being Eastern European is because life in Eastern Europe, unironically, not even joking, fucking sucks. It is nearly impossible to live the life that a normal
대통령 박근혜.
Chaebol is the Korean word for the powerful family-owned conglomerate.
From anguish to frustration.
The arrogance of the rich and powerful.
An emergency dispatcher in South Korea receives a distress call from a child aboard a ferry.
우리를 도와주세요. 배가 가라앉고 있어요.
The Seoul ferry is making a routine journey to the vacation hotspot Jeju Island, carrying 476 passengers. Most are school children and their teachers on a class trip. The dispatcher asks the boy to
There's 3 of these things. What's the other one? a lot of access here. Anyway, I'm just gonna. Oh, I get why there's two of these, so I can. What else? Do you have something here? This one? Don't put this in here. This one. Is this Nexus or something? It's gonna be Nexus, right? There shouldn't be any. Oh. Some random stuff. What's that? Let's go take a photo.
Be waterborne.